everybody!
Hey.
Everybody being merry. Welcome back to Morbid Movies Podcast. What are we covering today?
Okay, so today we are going to be talking about Snow White, A Tale of Terror from 1997, which stars Sigourney Weaver, Sam Neill, Gil Bellows, David Conrad, and Monica Keena. So,
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. What did you think of this one? Give us your short, quick review, Mary.
I have a fondness for this one because this is one I found when I was like, still a dirtbag teenager. And, at that time, fairy tale movies felt like mostly the domain of like Disney films, which had made them a lot more, they had happier endings. They were more saccharine and sanitized. And then along comes Snow White, A Tale of Terror, which tried to kind of get back to those original kind of dark, creepy fairy tale roots. And, I was really picking up on that at the time. So, it's watching it again years later. I just kind of had a good time remembering as much as anything.
Yeah, it was the first time I watched it. I've noticed that a theme for all our films. They all have kind of snowy, obviously the goth aesthetics, but it's snowing in most of the films that we do. Which is interesting.
I guess snow is more goth than I
Yeah,
realized.
maybe it is. Sigourney Weaver was a particular standout for me. I forgot how much I like Sam Neill as well.
I just the one thing with him, like love him, but totally unclear on why he chose to do an American accent for a film set in Europe.
Oh,
That
oh, wait. I've got something like so. Francis Cooker, who plays the Nana or Nana.
Mhm.
Um, I need you to go after this episode, and anybody who's not from the UK won't know this. There is a TV show called Friday Night Dinner. And that's how I know this actress. I'd never seen her in anything else. She plays the grandma in Friday Night Dinner. And I want you to go watch an episode of it after this and let me know what you think. And anybody who
Okay.
watches this, go and watch it because it's a complete, like, she does an American accent and it's goddamn awful. What I was like, who is this? This is obviously someone doing an American accent that isn't American. And then when I got the close up of when she opens the mirror thing, that beautiful kind of wooden mirror, and then starts screeching on the floor, I was like, hang on. I know this person from somewhere. It's the grandma from Friday Night Dinner, and nobody who's not from the UK is going to know what that is. But you'll be able to find it
I'm
online.
gonna
So
have to look that up because yeah, I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else, but I love it's like the moment that she's like gasping for
yeah, yeah.
life on the floor, that's when it clicks for you.
Yeah. That was pretty much it. All in all, though, Mary, I wasn't. This is probably the least I've enjoyed a film that we've covered. I do want to give a shout out to Sigourney Weaver as the kind of the sort of the evil queen. And there's an interesting fact that I want you to touch on in a minute about why, because I almost thought watching this, I was like, is this kind of beneath Sigourney Weaver a little bit? But actually, the reason she wanted to play the queen is quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so Sigourney Weaver said she wanted to play the evil queen role specifically because she didn't understand, why would a king marry like this terrible, mean, awful woman? So she wanted to play more of a sympathetic character who started out with good intentions and then just went downhill over time. Which I think brings a really interesting dimension to it. And I definitely agree with you, as much as I'm fond of this film, I think it is one that it has the beginnings of something great, but I think that they needed to do more with it to make it a truly good film. But Sigourney Weaver stands out for me because you can just watch beginning to end, you can tell she's having the time of her life in this role. Like she is enjoying herself so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of your facts I'm going to steal, which I really enjoyed, and actually it made me enjoy it more once I'd read this. It was she was enjoying the makeup and running
Oh
around
yeah.
and scaring people between takes. You wrote down that Sam Neill hated it, and she just kind of wanted to creep people out, which I thought was fantastic. Which I thought was it was a really nice fact because Sigourney Weaver, a consummate professional, great actress, known for some fantastic roles. getting to let her hair down in this kind of monstrous role almost, or
Right.
this supernatural role.
Well, and she's such a, naturally just beautiful woman getting to put on, what's essentially, monster makeup because they did make her look pretty creepy for this role
Mm.
and really, for lack of a better word, they really, like uglied her up for this and just seeing how much fun she's having just being in this like creepy makeup like is just enjoyable and I think that that makes up for a lot of the other flaws of the writing in the film.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll talk about some of the flaws in a second. I want to touch on my favorite scene because it kind of moves on from what you're saying. It's where Lily, the character of Lily, eats the apple, and Sigourney Weaver's kind of the creepy granny. She kind of mounts her a little bit and just kind of whispers into, and it's very sinister. After she's eaten the apple, and the acting, particularly for Sigourney Weaver, is top notch there. It's followed by one of the worst acting bits I've ever seen from David Conrad as Dr. Gutenberg, when he's like shaking, when she comes back to when he's trying to get her to come back to life. He's
Oh,
shaking.
I laughed so hard when he's
Breathe,
just
breathe.
absolutely like
Oh,
jiggling her around. She's in such a small girl, so you can really shake her too.
yeah. I was just like, come on, what? I mean, after I kind of yo-yoed, and I was like, some of the acting isn't great. Then I saw that, really sinister Sigourney scene as after the apple, and then the once again, I'll do it just because it's
Oh my God.
and it's like, come on, like it's a bit much, I thought. But what was your best and or worst scene for you, Mary?
Really like the best scenes. Oh, God, it's the ones with Sigourney Weaver, so it's hard to pick. But yeah, it's the way she like that scene you mentioned, and she's just with the apple and she's climbing up on the Snow White character, and she does that a lot in the film. Like she keeps getting inside people's personal space in uncomfortable ways throughout the film, and it's like just like the use of being a little too close to people is so incredible. It's just like even in the earlier scenes in the film when she's ostensibly still good, there is a sort of uncomfortable invasiveness to the character
Yeah, yeah,
in some
absolutely.
ways.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it's a beautiful performance, and it's, and worst performances besides the brain scene, which yeah, that one I just started laughing. I get hysterical every time I watch it. Is they want to work apples into the film over and over again, which is great. Except in the first scene when you see young Lily, she reaches out and picks an apple off an oak tree, and it drives me insane every single time. I feel like you could have probably scouted an apple tree somewhere in Europe.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned, again, Sigourney Weaver being the standout, and that factoid about her wanting to kind of delve deeper into the character. And it's actually interesting now that you're saying about the personal space thing. Having watched it, I am picking up on that now. Just thinking back, actually, there's a lot of nuances to Sigourney's character, particularly. Whatever we think of the other characters in this, I think Sigourney had great intentions for to show the humanity of the Queen, which comes off the early part of the film and that kind of steady decline, which I really like. I'm of the opinion, we tend to ask philosophical questions. Whether they're any good is another matter. But is anyone ever truly good? Is anyone ever truly evil? You've got to start somewhere. Something's got to happen, and obviously the Queen had a lot of dark stuff happen, and a lot of circumstances leading to that decline, Mary. So I don't know. Have you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like there is sort of an implication, and then the film's clumsy about it in some ways, but they too try to demonstrate also that even though she's in this marriage, she's kind of still isolated. Like she doesn't seem to belong with everyone else there. Like at the ball, she's just sort of ignored. Nobody even seems to notice, like when she starts to experience pain because everyone's too busy looking at Lily and Sam Neill's character, and it just there is this like she's been kind of iced out the whole way through, and when trauma hits home for her, nobody comes and sees her immediately. She's just left alone, and that's like a huge part of why she begins to descend into madness.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, and I feel like, she was a strong enough performer to carry a lot of that because otherwise I think that it would be kind of lost in how fast the story has to move to fit it into that
Yeah,
100
yeah.
minutes.
I think you're right. I think this could have done, it could have, again, it could have done with more time, etc., etc. But I understand there are limitations in that. I think there's some clever signifiers as well. I thought the mirror, the interpretation of the mirror, you open it up and it kind of closes, almost like, again, that supernatural element. I thought that was a really interesting take and the most interesting take I have seen as I go back over it, because I was initially going to come on here and completely slate this film, but actually going back over it, little things like the mirror and the way that it's put together, and the signifier of that kind of supernatural evil for me was very cleverly done, Mary.
Yeah, and honestly, I love that mirror so much, just the way it's built, and that was made in England, and I didn't write his name down, and now I regret it because the carver who actually carved the figure with the hands is from Yorkshire. He's a master carver from there, so I meant to write that down for you,
I'll do a little bit of research in post
but
and
uh,
yeah.
um, I feel like that cabinet and Sigourney Weaver are the stars of the film.
Very much so, very much so. And I think again, if I want to touch on another favorite scene quickly, a second favorite scene, because there wasn't many, but I also thought her death, the flames and I thought that was pretty well done. The glass in the face, it was
Hmm.
quite dark, quite visceral. So I thought that was pretty cool. So definitely some stuff in here for people that want kind of again that alternative fairy tale, because there's been some complete, rubbish fairy tale interpretations out there, but this is,
Hmm.
you know, again, there is good and bad to it, but I do, I would recommend people check it out, particularly if they're into the
Yeah.
Brothers Grimm stuff and the lore around Snow White. The Seven Dwarves, interpreted different here as well. Seven Miners, and they're interesting as characters too. So, what's your thoughts as we kind of round up on again? This is very tried, very tested, very overdone in popular culture. Snow White, is I mean, it's ingrained in popular culture anyway. But as an interpretation and as an alternative interpretation, if you were recommending this to viewers, to someone on someone on the street, what kind of things would you say?
Well, I will say I think it's interesting because I feel like, and I there may have been some before that I'm not aware of, but this was kind of the one of the first films to do this kind of darker interpretation of fairy tales in a while. And it really did, it's interesting in what it attempts to do because that does pave the way for a lot of newer films that tread similar territory, like the Maleficent film that tells the Sleeping Beauty from the point of view of the villainess. Comes to mind, or Wicked. I don't want to entirely give it credit because the book was published the same year this film came out, so I think there was something in the ether at that time that was coinciding, but to then have something like that become a Broadway musical and now a film is definitely in part paved by things like this that came before and show that there was an interest in stories being told in this way.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on before we started recording. You sent me a message around kind of wanting to look at the legacy of this film. Would you say I guess this is quite a bold statement. Would you say that it's kind of the earliest, kind of it's certainly female anti-hero, kind of not necessarily anti-hero, that's probably the wrong take, but certainly the point of view of the villain. We see it a lot with male dominated characters, you know. People that have kind of gone dark over time, and you can kind of empathize, but this seems to be quite an early, and this is just me spitballing based on what you've said and my interpretation of the film, but it feels like perhaps
I
female
think
leads hadn't been pictured in that way before.
Yeah, I mean, for a strong female lead like that to have that kind of sympathetic, this is how things went wrong for them telling, like I feel like it isn't completely unknown if you look across genres. Like I think you could probably find examples of that if you delve into like old noir films,
Mm.
that deal with darker subjects, but it's definitely not something that I feel like was being done as much in popular film,
Mm.
leading up to that. Like I don't recall there being too much of that in films from the 80s,
Mm.
in terms of that kind of nuance. So I think it does help pave the way for that. And you definitely see especially in was it Snow White and the Huntsman, which is a more recent dark retelling of Snow White. You actually see a lot of the same elements utilized in that film, so it definitely has had like even more direct influence on how some of that kind of storytelling comes forward. But I think it also probably is a reference point for developing that kind of narrative around characters, even like in films like Crimson Peak,
Mm. Which
where
we've
you
reviewed, so you should
which
check
we
that
did,
out.
yes. So check that out if you haven't yet. Where you do begin to have those like women who drive the plot as villainesses that in certain ways you can sympathize with and understand how they arrived where they did.
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, any more notes on the legacy? Anything else you wanted to add to that? Because obviously you've mentioned Maleficent, and you've mentioned Snow White and the Huntsman there. Are there any other kind of legacy points that you would recommend to be like, if you like this and you like this vibe, go and check this out? Anything else that you think is inspired by this film?
I mean, if you like dark fairy tale kind of vibes, I mean, there's definitely other films you can look at. I another one that it's like kind of rough in certain ways, but I still have a fondness for would be Terry Gilliam's Brother Grimm film, which I think is like all Terry Gilliam films, deeply flawed, but also absolutely gorgeous in many ways. So
Mm.
it's, there, if you're someone who loves film and you can forgive a film its foibles and just enjoy it, especially something where there's a lot of like fun visual elements, that's another one that is, kind of a treat, or one we should eventually cover as well that's in the same pretty much every I feel like every fairy tale film suffers from some of this. Legend, which is a Ridley Scott film, is also a great one for dark fairy tales, and that has an absolutely fantastic performance by Tim Curry in it, all done up as a devil.
Well, that
So,
that sounds great. That's the great
have
thing
you
about
not seen Legend?
no, no. This is what's great about this podcast is like there's a lot of films that I'm going back to now that maybe somebody had said, maybe you should check this out, but I didn't because of time, whatever. So now I'm making the time to watch these. I'm gonna say mostly great films because I've really enjoyed every other film we've done. I didn't think this sucked. I just like I remember watching Lilli like just really love on the. We go back to the apple scene because to me it's the best scene in the film. She's really loving that apple. Like she almost wants to. She wants to do things to that apple. And she's looking at it. She's shining it up. You know, and I'm just like, all right, it's an apple. Like you don't have to do weird things. She's like touching it, shining it up. I believe she's like, it's beautiful. And I'm like, I really like apples, but I don't like apples that much. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
there's a couple of there's a couple of things in this film that I imagine, just like you chuckled.
To
I
to be fair
imagine.
to that poor girl, she was only 16 when she was playing that part.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
all right,
she
yeah,
was a child, but it
yeah,
is a bit much.
yeah,
They could have reeled
exactly.
it in.
This is why we're sat here doing a podcast talking about films and not in front of the camera, isn't it? So there we are. Mary, as we round up, have you got anything you want to add about the film that you'd like people to know?
Uh,
And also, what have you thought about what we're going to do next, right here on the Morbid Movies podcast?
okay, and so I guess all I would have to say, if you want to go watch this, it's a cheap rental, and it's as long as you don't go in expecting much more than just a silly kind of popcorn fairy tale horror flick, you'll probably be happy. If you hate it, don't yell at me though. Um, and in terms of what we are going to do next, I don't know, maybe we should do Legend. I think you need to see that one.
All right, we'll do
Um,
it.
all
That's
right, so
that's
we will
that's
do that one.
March's episode. Yeah, I just remembered. Oh my god, I just remembered the bleeding mirror. Like, oh my god,
It's
why does
truly over the top.
why does the mirror bleed? Like, what's going on? Was it like this demon? I mean, I'd be into that if it was this demon controlling everything the whole time. But
I
why
think
does
the mirror is supposed to be evil, but I am unclear on why or how.
like you just stab the glass in this wooden cabinet, this beautiful wooden cabinet, which somehow has hands, and it bleeds? Like, somebody answer that question. Is the cabinet supposed to be supernatural or a monster or something? Anyway, I mean, that's a good question because there's a new movie who's just come out, called The Monkey, and it's a demonic monkey toy. Maybe we'll do that in the future of this podcast. So it's a good question. Is this inanimate object an actual demon? Because that's a thing in some films. So, but
Might
I mean,
be.
I missed the point where like this whole time this beautiful cabinet with a mirror that kind of makes grandma from Friday Night Dinner scream and die. It can bleed. So what is that about? That's my challenge to anybody who views this, is to answer that question.
We
Yeah.
have really tapped into your rage this episode.
Yes, we have. Yes. I'm just like, I just can't get out of my head. I can't get out of my head. Like, breathe, breathe.
I think it's good. This has been cathartic for you this time.
Yeah, it has. It really has. Actually, I've really enjoyed it. I'll give you the final word as always, Mary, because you're the coolest looking one. What would you like to say to our followers? Obviously, we know what we're doing next. Where can people find us? And yeah.
Okay,
Take
well,
it away.
As always, I want to thank people for checking us out, watching and listening. Be sure to like and subscribe, and give us 5 stars or whatever our rating system is going to be. And I am buying time while I find the script for
Do
where.
do we have a rating system? Oh yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe
I'm
we
guessing
should.
podcasts might.
Maybe we should. Maybe we should
Yeah.
have a rating system.
Just give us
Professional.
all the gold stars because we're the best. All right.
Yeah.
So if you do have a suggestion for a future episode, or you want to know that we're doing a great job because we're awesome, you can email us at morbidmoviepods@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at Morbid Movies Podcast. We are on Twitter at Morbid Movies Pod, TikTok at morbid.movies.pod, and on Blue Sky at Morbid Movies. So we are everywhere, sort of.
Sort of. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you very much for your time and attention in watching this. And as we sign off, I have one thing to remind you, when things get too stressful, when you're looking at an apple with too much affection, don't forget to breathe.